Hi, everybody. My name is Shanth Enjeti, and you're watching Shanth Enjeti Art. So, today, one of the things I wanted to talk about was imagination. And I thought it would be better if I recorded a pre recorded video instead of doing a live stream because when people are watching live streams and people are interacting with me on live streams, a lot of times it's difficult for me to hold a train of thought. I do the best I can, but it's not always guaranteed. And I started thinking about what are the things that inspire what I do, what fuels me. And I just kept coming back to this idea of feasting on imagination and the importance of imagination. And I wanted to talk with you about that because I realize that imagination is such an important spiritual fuel for us as human beings outside of your aspirations. If you want to be an artist or if you want to just, enjoy artwork, be an audience member, I think it's really important to look at imagination, understand what it is, and appreciate it when you see it other places. And one of the things that fuels what I do that I can't overstate is other people's imagination and my appreciation for other people's imagination. In fact, I would say that it is necessary to be able to appreciate imagination if you want to be an artist. You have to be able to appreciate it in other people because imagination is not something that everybody has. And even those people who have it don't all have it to the same degree. We get people every now and again in society and culture, I should say, and the human race that are imaginative beyond what is normal. They imagine things that inspire millions and millions of people. Some people imagine things that, imagine far less than that. And if you want to be in a space where imagination is the job, and I consider myself and everything I create, whether it's my comics, my art books, or any of the content that I do here, I am essentially responsible for, and my job is imagination. And my job is also inspiring people. So, what I do when I create my work and what I do when it comes to this very important aspect of what I do, which is imagination, I try to take in as much inspiration and I try to find people who have a mastery of, or I should say, who possess a high degree of imagination and then also a high degree of productivity. And I think that's the big thing that happens, which is imagination in some senses, it is daydreaming. But imagination, when it's effective, is a daydream worth hearing about from other people. So, other people, to make that a little bit clearer, if you have a daydream or a vision or an idea for something, that's great. What makes it valuable is if other people feel like they gain value from hearing about it. And that's a wild thing. That's almost impossible to describe except for in its results. And I think that a lot of hemming and hawing goes on because people look at artists or creators in the current era that we're in who aren't effective at imagining. They have no imagination, and they have no craft, no skill. And now that's a separate thing. And so whenever I see imagination and I enjoy the imagination of other people, what I love is the fact it doesn't require any work of me. And for anybody who works and anybody who works in a different field other than the imagination field and the escapism field, it would be like trying to imagine recreationally watching somebody do your job. Some people may like that, but that's not for me. I like to see people who are excellent at what they do. I don't want to watch myself box because I love boxing, but I don't have a skill for it. I love to watch highly skilled people ply their trade, and it's inspirational. Is it imaginative? No. Is it something I respect and think is amazing? Sure. And when I say it's not imaginative, the thing I want to make sure I'm clear about is imagination has become a catch all, as if being imaginative is some kind of virtuous trait to have. It depends on how you use it. Imagination is an incredible thing when it can be used to inspire people, but I wouldn't describe the skill I do my work with as being an imaginative process. Imagination is what gives me the idea. Skill and craft and a lot of labor is what makes this a job, what makes this an actual career and a pursuit. And so I don't ever confuse what I need to bring into myself to keep myself inspired and focused in the creativity of my work and the things I need to watch and be inspired by just as a part of being a human being like everybody else with what the job of imagination is. And I think when you see somebody who is incredibly successful, whether it's George Lucas, whether it's J.R.R. Tolkien, whether it's J.K. Rowling, for example, for me personally, as a creator, as somebody who operates in that sphere at a much different level than those folks do, I am filled with awe, wonder, and I'm impressed by it. And I think that that's probably one of the most important signs of a healthy creator is the ability to marvel at the genius of brilliant people, at the imagination, creativity of brilliant people. So we've seen a lot of people in recent times talk about the failings of really brilliant creators, how they're not as good as they once were, how they're not impressive, how they don't really understand what makes their work good. And while that last part might be true, that doesn't mean noticing their what is perceived to be their lack of imagination means you're an expert on it. And that may sound like that's a comment to the audience or a comment to critics, but that's actually not what it is. It's something that all artists need to understand. All artists need to acknowledge that. There are levels to this game. If you're, again, I love boxing, so I'm going to go to boxing. If you're a boxer and you think Floyd Mayweather is lucky, then you've got problems that I can't help you with. There's skill, there's high level ability. If you think Michael Jordan isn't exceptional, that he just got lucky, then you've got problems. And the same thing goes for artists. Whether or not you understand somebody's imagination and creativity, if it is something they have built on their own that did not really exist outside of that space before they created it, and it has achieved a huge success, then you should stop and take notice. And that's why I wanted to talk about what is inspiring me today. What is the kind of work that's inspiring me today? So right now I'm working on a book for a friend of mine. I'm working on actually not a book, but I'm working on a piece for a book by a friend of mine. Actually, one friend and one person that I'm getting to know, which is great. And that is Eric Weathers and the author of the book, Zeb Hatfield. And I'm working on a piece for their comic book, Battle Brick Road 2, actually. And the link is in the description if you want to catch up with those books or buy book 1 or 2. Now, my job is to take the job seriously, which I always do. I take every job I get seriously, including when I'm working on my own comic book, Nosfero, where there's a far more responsibility on me and far more work than I could ever articulate. It is extraordinary. It's an extraordinary amount of work, but it's work that I love enough that it's worth putting the time in, especially for all of you guys, especially for the audience. And so the prompt for me is quite wonderful. It's quite generous, actually, which is to say, I want you to create an image that will blow people's minds that is tied to my work, Battle Brick Road. And if you haven't seen the book, this is the a couple of I'm trying to think of what I can show, but it is very much a modern day exploration of the theme and the imagination of the world of Oz, and right there is that appreciation for imagination. Just as my own work, Nosfero, is inspired by the imaginative work of people like, Bram Stoker and Dracula and Murnau with Nosferatu and H.P. Lovecraft. We all have works that inspire us and feed our imagination, even as creators. They did as well, but let's be clear. I'm always a big believer in not saying, well, they were inspired by other people too, because as many people as I could be inspired by, it's unlikely that I'm going to be on the level of an H.P. Lovecraft in my life. In fact, I'd say it's nearly certain. That doesn't mean that there's no value in what I do. It means there are levels to this game. If you love boxing, if you're passionate about boxing, go box. If you only want to box if everyone thinks you're Floyd Mayweather, then you're going to be disappointed and you might be doing it for the wrong reasons. So what I think about when I take a look at this project is, because it's a job and because I take it seriously, I go, wow, I want to spend some time in this world, even if I'm not painting something from this world or painting this particular subject from this world. And so what I've been feasting on this week is The Wizard of Oz and its various incarnations. Primarily, I've been feasting on the imagination of Zeb and Eric and what they've done with this book. And then, because I owe this, and it's a responsibility, at least for me, I believe I owe this, it's a responsibility in doing this job, I've been thinking about the idea of creatures, monsters, and imagination. So I wanted to share with you something that's probably not going to make it in to the finished painting. In fact, it may have nothing to do with the finished painting, but it's the work that happens off to the side when you're doing a job like this. It's the work that happens off to the side, and it's the business of imagination for me as an artist. Other people may have different ways of going about things. This is the way that my mind works, and it's a very physical activity. It's something that comes from painting, and it's something that comes from pictures in my head of all of the things I've seen and trying to solve problems. So I want to show you how artwork I make that's only tangentially related and maybe not even relevant to the finished painting, what my process is when I'm doing that stuff and how that feeds the entire thing. So let's go take a look at that right now. All right, so I'm going to switch cameras so you can still see me and you can see the desk. All right, let's see if this works. And we'll go from there. All right, so hopefully that worked. Hopefully you can see my desk and you can see the work I'm doing right now. And you can see, this image right here. So let me talk to you a little bit about what you're seeing here. So this is a painting of the main character in Battle Brick Road. Her name is Thea, and she is involved in this painting is about her struggle against, of course, the evil forces of this world, and she is battling flying monkeys. And that is, in many ways, the flying monkeys in this story are fascinating because they can be gorillas, they can be chimpanzees, and they have this kind of very cool, malevolent quality to them. And when I was composing this piece, one of the things I saw as an opportunity, and again, this is where the imagination comes in, this is where the study of imaginative works come in, because this is not a completely new concept by any stretch. I thought it would be interesting to put the flying monkeys in a way so that at least one of them with his wings spread, and the chimpanzee flying monkeys in this world have feathered wings, whereas the gorillas tend to have these more bat wings. It's really cool. And I wanted to put one of them in there so that it almost looked like they were her wings, so that she was like a Valkyrie, an angel, that she became mythic in this world. And then on the technical end of things, I wanted to have these kind of serpentine metal sort of tendrils that are used by this villain. I wanted them to be kind of hinting at the letters O and Z for Oz. And that was something that I was kind of excited to do with this. So that's not what I want to talk to you about today. What I want to talk to you about today is something a little bit different. I want to talk to you about what's happening in the corner or off to the side on this piece. So let me see if I can do this. Chance would be a fine thing. So let's zoom way in on this thing. And let me move it over. There we go. And I want to talk about what's happening with this character right here, okay? So as I was working on this piece, and as I was working on this project, I started thinking of this character that's in the story, that's half human, half lion. He's half human and he's half lion right down the middle. So when I say that, I mean very literal in terms of his face. And while there are some qualities on the human side, there is a distinct difference. And part of that is the result of Eric's commitment and Zeb's commitment to designing something that isn't something you've seen before. So it's not going to be something that is somewhere on the scale of anthropomorphic from animal to person. It's not going to be on that particular scale. It's going to be something that is more idiosyncratic and something that has more character. And this fascinated me because it's a challenge. It's a visual challenge. In a way, it's a metaphor that works very easy in terms of text, but presents a lot of challenges when you try to manifest it visually. That's where the excitement comes in, because it's a challenge for your imagination, and it also fuels your depth of exploration. So while I was focused on this other aspect of what I'm doing, which is right here with Thea, the other aspect of it was I wanted to explore this, because that kind of exercise helps me to just activate my imagination. And so after a lot of time thinking about it, and after a lot of time looking at this character, and I was trying to think of things like, well, what does it mean to me? If I were to do a painting about this idea, about this concept, what would I do with it? And the thing I came down to was that the idea of creating this character, the idea of making this thing work, I was always trying to make the eyes line up, as they do in the actual character design. And then I started thinking, what if I didn't? What if I didn't do that? Now, is this useful to the actual story? Again, no, that's not what these exercises are about. This is useful to my exploration, which is why feasting on imagination and pushing your imagination is so important. And so what I started thinking about was I tend to think of the human side of the character to be the one that we would, that would resonate with us, that we would connect to. And the more I started thinking about it, the more I started thinking, what if, again, this is the imagination aspect of things, and this is the kind of playing you have to do, so to speak, in terms of creatively when you're trying to come up with these ideas. I thought, what if they didn't? What if they didn't? And what if I was writing this character with this kind of pathos that was, I don't know, I don't want to say tragic, but kind of tragic, kind of sad, in some ways a little bit like Two-Face, from Batman, but also the Phantom of the Opera in some senses, those kinds of things, if I went somewhere more operatic with it. And this is where I think feasting on imagination is so important. This is where I think looking at other people's work is important, and really admiring other people's work is so important, because no one was prompting me to do this. So that's just my passion for this stuff. But also it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to chase things down and say, well, what is this? What is this? And just go, 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 and get yourself in a more creative space. So what I found myself thinking about after a while of doing sketches, and I did sketches where I was playing around with this character as, a lion character, even though I know this isn't the way the character is meant to be seen or realized. I started playing around with that and exploring more lion-like anatomy and exploring the Tin Man from the story. It's really a great world. It's really a wonderfully realized and beautiful world to explore and live in. And again, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to do so with this pinup, which is going to be in a poster book that you can get again on the link below, just to make sure you guys know it exists, because I know for a fact I'm going to be proud of what I create. So I want you guys to know where it's going to be. And so I started thinking about the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and I started thinking about the portrayal of the character in the 1939 version of it. And that really appealed to me. That really kind of struck me as something very haunting and very powerful, because I want to pull from the best. And I know how I would word it is this: the better the sources you pull from for inspiration, which is to say imagination, the better people are at their imaginative ability, then the more you're going to get out of it. The more simplified or crude people are with it, or unskilled they are, the more that's going to feed into your work. And so I started thinking about Charles Laughton's portrayal of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And I started thinking about, by the way, a design for the character that was carried over very much into the Disney animated film, but also in characters like Sloth from the Goonies. I mean, this character has been seen, or this understanding has been seen many places. And what they did is they used the eye you were supposed to focus on, that wasn't the makeup. They used that one to be the one that you focused on. And then they had another eye that wasn't articulated, that was just open because of the special effects from the time, which, by the way, are still amazing, that was looking down, that wasn't looking at you directly. And I was so captivated by that because it has a sort of a sadness about it. It's a downcast kind of quality to it. It just looks like it gives the character this kind of melancholy. And so I started thinking that, wow, wouldn't it be cool for me to do a painting? Wouldn't it be a great opportunity when I'm sketching and I'm developing things to do a take on the lion character where I'm exploring that, where I'm exploring the idea that the eyes aren't on the same level, and that the eye that's more pronounced that you're supposed to notice is the one that is the eye of the lion, and that the humanoid eye I am treating very much like the somewhat misshapen side of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And that just really spoke to me. And what it led to is, because again, I'm doing a lot of this stuff simultaneously, so I can put a movie on while I paint. It really fueled the creativity of this piece, and it's not going to be something that anybody is going to know, that anybody is going to see, but it's what I have to do as an artist. What I have to feast on is really great creativity. And so in addition to everything else I'm looking at, the figure reference, the chimpanzee reference, all of the different character stuff, I'm always casting as broad a net as possible, so that when I narrow down and I bring things in for the final, that it's concentrated, that it's more powerful. That's what fuels almost everything I do. So if I can take a moment here, I'm going to move on from this sketch, but I wanted to share that with you guys, and I want to show you how that feeds its way into a finish, with another painting that I'm working on, which again, if you're new here, I work on these during live streams in addition to other crazy things I do on live streams. And it's so you may already have seen it, but I want to share it with you because it's a part of the process. It's a part of this creative process. I may even show you too, but we'll see. We'll see. And this is just the joy of, in many ways, being an artist. So let's take a look at this. Well, this is the imaginative work of being an artist and a little bit of the hard work. I like sharing this stuff with people. So let me show you this piece right here. It's a piece I'm very proud of. I think it's going to be one of the best things I ever make. I think that the best book that I've ever made is Nosfero, which I'm very excited about. I just got word that I'm going to be getting the books are going to be arriving soon. Hopefully this Friday is the plan. But this is a painting I'm working on right now for another friend of mine who commissioned me to do this painting. And this is a painting of his book and his world called The Lucent. And it's a fairly large painting. It's the image area is 12 by 18. And I want to show you a little bit about what's involved in this and just show you some of the details because I think it could be interesting. So here we go. When we're looking at this piece, and I'm going to move my camera out a little bit, sorry for the sound effects there, and then I'm going to adjust my zoom there. So this is a painting I'm doing for the Lucent Painted Death. What is involved in this story? In my personal opinion, nothing short of everything. But that's usually why people kind of come to me with interesting jobs, is because they assume that I'm going to go into it and deep dive into it and try to make something as beautiful as possible. And it's a pleasure to work with the people that I've worked with. And in recent months, I've had the opportunity to do work for Michael Bancroft, Eric Weathers, and also Razorfist on his comic book Ghosts of the Badlands. And it's really exciting to do this kind of stuff. And so what you start to see here in a finish like this, in a piece like this, is layer upon layer of imaginative complexity, skill, craft, which is a separate thing, that lead to the making of a painting like this. Now, when you look at a finished painting, like this one I did for Razorfist for Ghosts of the Badlands, this is a very different piece. One of these paintings right here, did you hear that? I feel like that was the boxing bell telling me that the round was over. When you see this piece right here, this piece has to do with poetry. This piece has to do with the nature of time, the nature of death. This has to do with is tied very much into the story of Gilgamesh. These are very powerful images. These are incredibly rich details. And the comic book, and the second book is available now. The first book is also available. It's great. It's an incredible world to go into, but it's very different than this world, which ties into the Wild West. It ties into the history of Westerns. It ties into the Judeo-Christian religious traditions. In terms of the cross, it deals with ideas of missionaries and spirituality in that world. And it also makes references and has elements of it that are very specific to history. They're real elements. And in a lot of ways, it ties into the region of the artist and where this story, takes place, which is to say in Arizona, if I'm not mistaken. So I started doing things when I was working on this piece, like looking at HD footage of different areas in Arizona that the story talks about. I started doing as much research as I could on Westerns. I was feasting on creativity. I was feasting on nature, but more importantly, I was feasting on imagination. And the most important bits of imagination are the imagination that comes from the people who contract me when I'm doing a job like this, because we're sort of sharing in this imaginative process. And so that's a big part of what this stuff is. So when you look around me, which you're not going to get to see because my studio space is a mess, but if you were to look around me, you would see books and books and Blu-rays of things that I think are quintessential and beautiful works of imagination. That's what you're going to see all around me. And that's the stuff I feast on. And what I love about, talking about my work, and what I love about what I'm working on, I can't believe I haven't even shown this to you guys yet. But what I love about working on Nosfero, and this is the proof of the book, like I said, the printed books are coming, heaven help me, in a massive shipment on this Friday at the time of this recording. But when I'm working on something like this, a fully painted comic book, it is just this unbelievable 12-round marathon, day after day after day, to create and paint things that are going to inspire people, that are going to make people excited. And I would be in a wilderness, or I should say I would be in a desert, an empty desert, if I didn't have the gift of the history of human imagination in the form of storytelling, movies, paintings, pictures, all of that stuff informs what I do. And so I guess if there's one thing I'd like to say in terms of wrapping up this video is, if there's a point to it, which, I don't know if there always has to be, but maybe there is, it's this. If the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, I think to butcher Marcus Aurelius's quote there, then what are the thoughts that are coming into your mind? Are they imaginative? Are they inspiring? Are they hopeful? Are they optimistic? I know for my sake, I have to live in that world. No matter how bleak the fiction is, by the way, it's not that everything is a bed of roses, but no matter how bleak the situation is in a particular narrative, whether it's the novel, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which if you haven't read, or novel, the book, if you haven't read the story, it's, it's not easy. It's not an easy story. Then you might misunderstand what I'm saying, or Shakespearean tragedy is another example of that. But the greatness of imagination, the imagination of the past, is what we have to make sure that we're feeding ourselves with, the best stuff. And I always say you can tell a lot about a creator or the lack of imagination somebody has by their inability to appreciate imagination and their desire to erase imagination that dims their light a little bit. For me, that's like dimming the sun to make my desk lamp feel better. And that's not how I go about things. I wake up every day excited by other people's imagination. I wake up excited about the incredible people who have worked in this almost ludicrous, in a sense, field, if you had to justify it, of bringing joy, bringing imagination to people's lives through a lot of hard work with no guarantee ever if it's going to fall on deaf ears. And I'm thankful that throughout my career, I've been able to, take this pursuit that I love and find that I do have an aptitude for it. And it comes from hard work and discipline, because daydreaming is what's the daydreaming doesn't produce a book. Hard work and work ethic does. And in a lot of ways, you're in this kind of open space when you're creating, and you have to be the one that puts in those rules, those guidelines, those touchstones, and those signposts in order to direct your travel to get to a finished product. And as somebody who's now, this is my third book that I've self-published, and it's by far the most complicated. The joy of it has been putting in the work ethic it takes to be able to share a clearer vision of my imagination with you guys. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. I'm going to have the credits at the end of this, like I always do with my channel members. Thank you to everybody who's liked and subscribed to this channel. It counts. It matters. I do appreciate it. And I will talk to you guys soon. I'll be moving ahead and doing more live streams, of course, more videos. So, if you click on the bell, it'll let you know when those are going to happen, if you care to, if that's something you're interested in. But have a great day out there. And as I always say, speak easy, stay gold, keep the faith, and most importantly, because this is what my name actually means, peace. Have a great day, guys. Take care.